quick thanks to TTArtisans for sending this lens out for review. So listen, I love using different cameras and lenses to just change our perspective on the way we observe the world. And certainly one unique way to do that is through a macro lens. But at the same time, and as fun and as creative as can be, it's not something that many of us use that often, which is why I think this TTArtisan's 40mm f2.8 for APS-C, and in my case, Micro Four Thirds, is a great, affordable option for getting some really fun, useful, close focus shots. This might be the best macro option for people out there who are on a budget or just looking to get some shots more for fun. I did this trendy image combining my fiance and I's irises, which I did with my GH7, and this tiny light from Ulanzi. This is something people pay hundreds of dollars just for this one photo, and I can do it with a lens that isn't much more than 100. It can be a ton of fun to play with and also legitimately useful. But yeah, of course it works as a normal lens as well. You know, it goes all the way to infinity like a normal lens. And at an 80mm equivalent on Micro Four Thirds, 2.8 is decently fast. You can get some decent blur, but we'll talk more about the bokeh quality a little bit later. So speaking of image quality, it's decent overall, right at 2.8, but with most budget lenses, it does pay to stop down a little bit, especially if you're shooting like a really flat subject. Those corners are gonna be a little bit soft. So I would say 5.6 might be the best sharpness side to side, or at least the best balance. Maybe 8 is best. I would not go much further down than 8 though. So of course the real test of a macro lens is going to be how good do the images look at those macro distances. Images look sharp. Stopping down mostly is for getting more in focus. I think just like at normal distances, 5.6 to 8 might be your best results, but even 2.8 you can get some good results if you can get it to focus. And yeah, of course this lens isn't perfect. You can get some chromatic aberrations if you really try. You're more likely to see like ghosting and glowiness and low contrast. So to wrap this up, basically it's going to perform best at macro and like medium distances, and at infinity it's going to be a little rough with kind of blurry, smudgy edges. Flare can also be a little wacky here. There is a benefit that this lens, more on this lens cap in a minute. Oh my gosh. So one benefit of this design is that this entire lens barrel is kind of hollow. That's so scary, I don't want to touch the lens. So it kind of acts as a built-in lens hood, with the glass optics being about this far back. And so what that means is flare's gonna get cut down quite a bit, but not all the way. And when you're focused up close, you can get some weird glaring type of flare. So just keep an eye out for that. The flare quality and the Sunstars itself are nothing to write home about, but you know, it's fine, I guess. The thing here that actually really impressed me was the bokeh. I think it's a real standout on this lens. Sure, you can find some situations where some corners are just slightly out of focus, and anything that's just mildly out of focus isn't great, but it's not great on any lens really. I think the bokeh, even a little bit past slightly out of focus, like moderately out of focus to deeply out of focus to the focus transitions, all looks great, all looks super smooth, and the bokeh actually is smooth stopped all the way down. Oh, and the focus breathing is a little bit rough, but that's the case for every macro lens ever. That's just how macro lenses work. So while the optics aren't 100% perfect for a lens that sits just above $100, I still think this is a great option, but I would say the real issues with this lens begin with the build and handling. But it's not the build quality. We'll get to the handling next. So in terms of the build quality, it's a fairly well-built lens. I really like a lot of what's going on here. The focus is smooth enough. The aperture clicks in half stops and is one of the most satisfying sounding lenses I've ever heard. Let me see if I can. Oh, they're like kind of soft, but have a nice sound. Oh my God. Maybe the best aperture clicks I've ever heard. Not that that matters that much, but it is satisfying to use. The focus ring feels just as good as the aperture, although this handling section is where I have trouble. See, macro lenses are not easy to use in the best of times, and This is, you know, this is fine. This is as good as any you would probably expect. It's just a little tricky. Like when using this at normal distances, it's pretty imprecise. Like you've got like a centimeter between infinity and like 1.5 feet. The focus actually is nice and precise going through all of the macro distances, which is where you want that precision because it is really hard to focus. And it's not, again, not this lens, so just take your time and be patient. And there are just 3 things that I either want you to keep in mind or were little nitpicks or just things I didn't like. So the lens cap, it looks nice, it's cool, but like this is a real situation that happened to me where it's a screw-on filter, so it's sometimes really hard to get on. I was at a wedding, I just got done doing the details of the rings and stuff, and I was like, they're like, okay, come on, do this next shot. I'm like, hey, let me switch my lens real quick. And I was like, let me just get this back on. And I was like, oh, of course I get it on perfectly. So sometimes it's easy, but just imagine it being like a quiet bride prep room, and I'm like, I got it. One sec, guys, I'll be right over. And like you're starting to like panic, and you've drank too much coffee. Oh, I'm actually having trouble now. Got it. So, not my favorite, but once it's off, it's off. Once it's on, it's good, and it is really protective. I love how protective it is, but it does frustrate me. Okay, enough on that. Another funny little quirk I noticed was that, like, okay, so let's take a look at our distance scale. I love that there's a double distance scale for your magnification ratios. One appears on the lens barrel as you're focusing closer and closer, and the other is actually on the lens focus ring, which is cool, but they don't ever really match up. Like, so to me, it seems like the ones on the focus ring are more accurate. So I would use those, but I do like the idea of this. It just is not that helpful at the end of the day, especially because it doesn't match. And then one more thing to keep in mind, it's not really a flaw of the lens, but because the breathing is so huge when you're zoomed in, I think the IBIS of your camera is gonna act up. So me personally, I just kind of programmed in 40, 50, 60, 70 millimeters to counteract that, and it still was never quite perfect. So again, you might just want to turn off IBIS and use a really nice tripod, but whatever works for you. But yeah, what a fun lens, especially for the price. And I really do enjoy this thing despite the issues. So if you're in the market for a macro lens that doesn't break the bank for Micro Four Thirds and APS-C, I just have to say that it's not the easiest lens to use, but no macro lens is. I honestly think unless you really need autofocus, this is a fantastic macro option. So anyway, guys, thanks again for TTArtisans for sending this out to me and being very patient with my review. I just wanted to test this out as much as possible. And thank you guys for watching, liking, subscribing. Again, we're marching towards 5,000. Maybe we're there by the time this releases, who knows? But any subscriptions help. I check these like way too often. I look every day, and every time I see just one more subscriber, it like makes my day, you know? So make my day. No, seriously though, if you want to subscribe, if you want me to pop up in your subscription feed and your recommends a little bit more, that's one way to tell the algorithm you like what I'm doing. Micro Four Thirds, full frame, Lumix content, things like that. And if you do subscribe, you know I'm always going to see you when I see you. All right, guys. Peace. Take it easy. And let me know what you think of this little guy. I like him, even if my camera won't focus on him.